Hello everybody, Robert Marzullo here, and today I want to talk to you about foreshortening. Had some requests for that, so I figured I would address it, and here we go. So foreshortening to me and the way that I would try to approach it, first off, I would always try to draw, and keep in mind I draw more comic books and illustration work, but I always first try to define my scene. Uh, Scribbling on the back of a scratch pad is all good and dandy, and whatever works for you for practice. But to get a better feel for what works in the scene, you need to kind of sketch out your scene first. So I would lay out a panel border like that. I would define the horizon. In this case, it's an angle shot, so the horizon line would be on an angle. Uh, 1 point perspective in this scene. Most are in comics, and you get some 2 and 3 point perspectives, but I would say probably 70% or whatever, a majority of your shots are going to be 1 point perspective with maybe little bits of 2 point or something. But okay, so there's a basic layout for the panel, and then from there I would, you know, sketch out my mannequin or whatever. And you can use this as for what you will. Like, you may want to do a very detailed rendition of your character. I start very loose and then build onto it so that I don't have too much time invested into my thumbnail sketch uh, immediately. A lot of times I'll even zoom back like this, just so I don't overdraw, um, in this beginning stage. First I want to get all the elements of the foreshortening or scene down. So let's define the shoulder position. We'll do one arm further out towards the viewer. Now keeping in mind, like, that's actually the distance from the shoulder to the elbow right there. It's not going to be a very long distance because we're foreshortening the object. Now the same arm, we'll do it off to the side here, might be, say, every bit of that kind of length. But in a foreshortened effect, that same arm foreshortened is going to be very shallow jumps like that. And then also a very wide opening here, all the way down to the shoulder would normally be a lot larger in comparison to the wrists, obviously. But with foreshortening, it might be, depending on the amount of foreshortening that you're doing and the angle, it could be smaller or the same size or whatever. And then you would start overlapping your shapes like that. So let me do that back into the scene up here. I just want to kind of explain that in case you didn't understand why I was doing these short little lines. And then back here, let's say that he's leaned over. This would be the chest barreling out. And then recess back. And then for balance, this leg's forward here. There's the wrist opening. So then we'd bring this knee up to here. Make sure you round it over and back to get the shape to look kind of like a leg cylinder or whatever. You don't want to box it out too much. But again, you don't want to spend too much detail in this stage either. You really want to keep this as a thumbnail. And that's why I already have the urge to zoom in and kind of refine some of these lines, and you got to hold back from that. So I mean, I might not even keep this thumbnail. This might not work. So this will probably be the deciding factor right here. So now the chest is barreled down, so you're going to see more of the shoulders, and those are going to raise up over the neckline. And again, let me draw off to the side here. Traditionally, a character, when looking front face on, you would have a head here. You would have the neck coming down and meeting at the base, where the shoulders and the trapezes and all that good stuff, the pectorals, in the front here. So that's traditionally how you would see that head. But since this character is now at a steep angle facing the viewer, now that head's going to sit down. It's going to block some of the neck. It's going to definitely sit in front of more the trapezoids, and then that's how you get another bit of your foreshortening done there. So now this arm is, say, back, and then maybe coming forward this way. So there's the wrist, there's the elbow, here's the hand. Let's see what he's doing here. Maybe he's doing like the pointed hand here, and then here he's doing the fist pose, clenched fist. Okay, and this leg just drifts back into and almost becomes non-existent. Here, this one's tucked back, and you see some of the foot. Okay, so there, I think that'll work for our foreshortening for the character itself, and just for the sake of it, you know what? I'll just do a couple little buildings or something. That way, you see why I did, add the perspective lines, so that you can thumbnail the entire scene and see if it's going to work. Maybe there's a car over here or something. These are all your props. So you start dropping in your props, and think of it like you're setting up a scene for your actors and your director, and you're putting all this stuff into place so that your actors can come out and act. And if you think of it like that, you'll start looking at it like, you know what? Yeah, if I was sitting on the side of the road and I was filming this, wouldn't there be, some kind of foliage, maybe a tree right here, or maybe a fire hydrant or whatever. You start thinking in terms of a little bit more to reality. Oh, there'd be some people walking back here, even though the scene's focused on my actor here. There would be people in the neighborhood just doing their daily routine. So, okay, so now with a few things laid out, we can zoom in here and focus more on the foreshortening. So, with those lines, kind of, do your cylinder drawing or cone drawing or rope drawing, whatever your preference is. And then just remember that basically these shapes, each shape that comes in front of the next is going to block a certain amount of space from that object behind it. That's the foreshortening. So, and start studying that in every picture you look at, and you'll start to train your mind's eye to kind of see that and adopt that into your drawing. And it's not going to happen right away. I mean, that's the other part you need to understand. I don't want to see people go to sketch this stuff and they go to draw it, and it doesn't come out right in their first 10 tries, and they're like, well, I must not be an artist. That's not what's going on there. I've literally drawn thousands of these types of sketches to even get thus far, and I'm not even saying this is all that great, but it conveys the idea. And then once I refine it with a couple more levels of layers, I could even make this dopey little scene look really cool, so that's and that's why it's a thumbnail. I'm not trying to put all my heart and soul into this beginning part of the sketch, because until you know that the scene is going to work, until you know that everything's going to fit and come together in your composition, you shouldn't be dedicating a whole lot. And especially with foreshortening, where to me foreshortening is harder than traditional straight-on drawing, so I'm going to spend more time with my thumbnails to get that to work well. So let's try it again. I'll show you another one. And let's see here on this one, and practice changing your panel sizes too and shapes. You don't want to get in the habit of using just the same square for every panel. That's also boring for your comic book scenes. So on this one, let's do let's see, what's a good one? Let's see. Well, let's sketch out our scene again. I'm going to do another dramatic angle. I think it goes well with foreshortening. So, and here's the character's head. Well, here's their spine. And let's do, here's their shoulder or chest line. That. And again, let me zoom back so I don't try to add too much detail at this stage. And let's do this one where it's not an extreme foreshortening shot, but it's very much foreshortening, and it makes for interesting poses. The other thing to remember with foreshortening and these poses to make them look more dynamic, the more that you can change the angles of, or the arrangement of the body parts where they come in front and overlap other areas, the more dynamic these poses seem to get, I think. So say for instance, here's the leg here, And that angle, because it's on an angle like this, you know, the weight bearing leg is back here. And you know, it can't be where they just entirely don't make sense either, but for the sake of what I'm trying to show here, we won't worry about that. So the leg coming up and over this way creates a better shape than if, for instance, legs were straight down. And same thing here with the arm. So you're going to get a little bit of the shoulder here. I'll do this with cone drawing again just to make it more simplistic to show you what I'm trying to do. You actually, the shoulder from an angle like this would actually appear on both sides of the bicep tricep. So always, you know, keep that in mind when you're looking at reference and stuff and trying to get better at drawing anatomy. The chest would actually bend backwards this way now because it would go along with the solar plex, the rib cage here. So, you know, it's hard to get your mind across. You know, a lot of times you'll want to keep drawing the chest as this, you know, bowed out shape every which way you draw it, but it actually changes shape based on the angle that it sets. So, alright, there's the other part of the chest there. Okay, so now the other cylinder. Even though I'd probably rope draw this one, and you know, I kind of bounce back and forth, but just to explain what I'm doing here. So he's kind of got his arm lifted up. It's not quite blocking his face, but maybe protecting himself from falling debris or something like that. I always do like a little line for the elbow, and I'll do a little circle when I'm doing cone drawing to show where I'm going to point off the elbow and apply the musculature or the anatomy afterwards. There, and then maybe the hand is kind of bent over here, and the fingers are kind of curled. You kind of do this to show where the face is lined up to. And even that pose right there is basically has some foreshortening in it. Now the real trick is to take this back arm and have it add to the scene. I mean, you know, you got a basic layout where you could just have the arm come out, back towards the camera. I guess that's foreshortening too, though. And then the hand wedge coming up, and the fingers like this. Yeah, that actually does work. I mean, well, minus that scribble there that got mucky. It's hard to see what I was doing there, but it actually does work. So let me try that. Let's see if it works. You know, and keeping in mind, I'm not afraid to erase and try something different. So, there's another way with the circles. It's kind of like the cone drawing there. There, the elbow's back here, it gets hidden. And that's another thing, training yourself to do. And that's probably why the cone drawing does work, because see, if you notice there, when I drew this cone and I went to fill in the elbow, it got blocked, and I just pretty much, I did a line there, but knowing that when I go to sketch the next layer, you're not going to see an elbow from that angle. So that kind of showed me that by getting used to leaving these openings in the cones and then putting those so close together from that perspective. So I don't know if that's just from knowing how to draw it like that, or from drawing it enough where I recognize that, you know, you're just not going to see that there. I mean, shoot, you're barely going to see the tricep here, if at all. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. You really got to look at, and that's where photo reference probably is best, and looking at life around you and making sure that you realize that in certain perspectives, you don't see every muscle. And that's the biggest mistake I think I see people make, myself included sometimes, is you don't know which ones to omit. And that's a big part of making believable scenes. You have to know when to say, you know what, you're just not going to see that from this angle. Get that out of there. Shade this leg down. That also makes it look like it recesses back into space. And this hand comes out to be a wedge. And what I would do there is I would actually immediately start to erase some of this, because you know, you get too many funky lines in there and it's hard to tell where you're going with it. And then the fingers coming out like this. And do a little bit of erasing as I go. just so I can see what I'm doing. All right, and there's our thumbnail for that perspective. So, and I would just refine that. I would just keep, you know, maybe I drop this arm a little bit lower so it comes in front of the forehead more, and you see just his eyes right under his arm. Maybe that'd be a little bit more dramatic. And actually, I'd probably do that real quick with a crop and move. So crop here, move it down or rotate it. Let's try that. And erase the top portion of the head. Yeah, I don't know. I like that, but it works in the sense that it gives it another more, you know, a little bit more depth, or it makes you kind of directs you more to his face now since it's almost covered. It makes you actually look there probably first or sooner, and then you know your background, drop your buildings in or whatever. You know, if it's an intense scene, your lines for focus. Okay, and what's another good way to explain this for you? Okay, I guess another one, real quick, and then we'll close this one up, is, you know, like I said, as far as bringing the other shapes in front of the previous shapes or whatever to bring it out, let's try downward perspective, but foreshortened of an arm. Wedge shape here for the hand. Or you know what, better yet, I'm going to do this two ways for you. I'm going to show you the arm in perspective, but then this is what I would consider perspective, but not a perspective with a dramatic field of view. This would be a normal field of view. Drawing the fingers in with little spaghetti lines there. Okay, so there that is. I'm not going to elaborate real far. I mean, hopefully you can see that. So there's an arm coming out at you with the hand up. Okay, which is more interesting than an arm just straight down in the scene. But now what I want to show you is an extreme, the same thing, but with an extreme field of view. And now, me, typically what I would do to do these scenes, and do it any way you see fit, I would actually draw the hand first. And the reason being is because it's going to be such an extreme perspective, and it's literally making the object up close, right in your face. So what I would do is I would start there because I don't want to run out of panel or scene there. So now I know that, especially after sketching it already, I know that you got, like, say, the forearm ending here and most of the forearm is blocked. You've got the bicep, say, here, and I'm going to change the angle slightly so it's not too straight, and then the shoulder back here. And for these, I feel that just using these overlapping half moon shapes are better because it's such an extreme angle. You're not really, it's going to be harder to sit there and draw your skeletal lines like that and make sense of them. I don't know, that's just me personally, but do whatever works for you. But now what happens is you focus on, well, here you're going to see just a little bit of the back of the arm. It's mainly going to be the top part of the forearm here. You get some of your lines, but they're probably going to come off into a few of the muscles and then complete shading. You're not going to see much of the detail there. and a little bit of the bicep here, and that's it. The shoulder and the connection to the arm, whatever. So that's and really the main detail and focus is going to be on the most foreshortened area. So that's kind of why I draw it first, and I just know that my attention in the scene is going to be right there. I'm just going to draw over top of these fingers, the real boxy kind of effect. So essentially, the more dramatic the foreshortening is, the less you're going to see of each muscle, and you're just going to kind of get this overlapping of the forms, and then go right to shading. And one last thing before I bring it to a head, and there's a head. I want to show you one more thing. This isn't foreshortening entirely, but it applies to foreshortening. So make sure that when you do your structuring, you know, because I've gotten used to doing a lot more rope drawing now than cone drawing. I believe it looks more natural when you're done. But if you do the other way, if you do the cone drawing, and it helps you because it is kind of easy to follow. So you do like this. There's your forearm. Here's your shoulder. Okay, the shoulders, make sure it's always a bigger shape too. Like that. Okay, so if you decide to do that, and you know there's some kind of hand shape coming off here, just remember to do one thing. And I'm just going to turn this to a blue layer, and then I'm going to draw the next layer. You know, better yet, I'm going to turn this back. I'm going to go ahead and draw even some muscles on this this cone drawing. I'll get to what I'm trying to explain here. Okay. Now here's the part you want to keep in mind. When you go to do your next layer, do not connect all the muscles that you just drew. That's all I wanted to get at. So it's something that I'm starting to see in my work more and more, and I really want to get past. So I want to try to help out, you know, whatever artists are watching this, and just show you, like, watch how much more natural it looks if you focus on, okay, you got your line weight, then it breaks off. Okay, you got it where it comes down. Here's your bicep. A bicep can look highly defined just with that right there, and then now you're into the forearm. Forgive me, I don't know this muscle, but this is real important in the forearm to bring out. So good thick shadow there. Maybe one of the lines that come from under it. The second one, a little bit less dramatic. And that's it. And you know, you can shade it more, but what I'm getting at is not to trace every muscle. It looks really bad. It looks very robotic, and instead of having this nice fluid anatomy, you end up with this very rudimentary and amateur looking, you know, musculature, you know, whatever. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you can do a lot more with just a few lines in your thick to thin, and then you know you can go crazy with your shading and do whatever you're going to do, but mainly if you don't trace the muscles entirely, you're going to get a lot better look, a lot more natural feel. So that's all I wanted to explain, and that's mainly because, like I said, I battle with that, so I wanted to help you if that's an issue you face, and you keep getting done with your drawings, and you're like, man, what, you know, why don't they look natural? Why don't they look realistic? It's probably because you're over rendering the shapes of the muscles themselves. You know the anatomy, you're getting better at the anatomy, but you almost overdo it. You know, it's like knowing that a bicep has a split down the middle. You don't want to draw that split. I mean, you might want to shade and do, I don't know, a tiny portion of it if you're trying to draw some really ripped out character. But if every actor in your scene has just every muscle just ripped out of his head, you know, it's just gonna look ridiculous, you know. Um, you want to save that maybe for your hulking characters or whatever, but um, you got to have some guys in there that look like they ate a couple donuts and maybe have pizza on Friday night, or it's just not going to be believable. So, anyways, hope that helps, and you know, just wanted to address that. So that's my take on foreshortening and what you can do to, you know, bring out your scenes. Remember, overlap shapes is very key and essential. And then if the shape is closer to the camera, it's going to be larger. And if it's more directed at the camera, the overlap is going to be more defined and more immediate. So hope that helps. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see in the future so I can make these videos better and more informative. And take care, keep drawing, and have a great day. Bye.